The scent of roasted coffee filled the air, blending with the chatter of suited businessmen and fashionably dressed socialites. It was a luxury cafe, a place where money wasn't just spent but flaunted. In the corner, seated alone at a table too fine for his worn-out coat, was Alexander Pierce. His eyes were sharp, his posture commanding, but his clothes simple, unassuming, painted a different story. A group of young professionals at the next table sneered at him, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. Look at him, probably hoping someone buys him a coffee. Might be an ex-con. You never know with these types. Alexander didn't react. Not yet. He sipped his espresso, cool and calculated, waiting for the right moment. If they only knew who he really was. Just a few years ago, he had been homeless, sleeping in the biting cold, scavenging for food while society turned its back on him. That world had taught him one thing: money wasn't just power, it was survival. And now, he was one of the wealthiest CEOs in the country, the man behind Pierce Industries, a billion-dollar empire. But what the world didn't know, what even he hadn't known until recently, was that his past held secrets far beyond his rise from poverty. It all started with a single letter, one he had been both anticipating and dreading. The DNA test that changed everything. When the results came in, Alexander had hesitated before opening them. It was just a simple test, one he had taken out of curiosity. But as he read the words on the screen, his world tilted. 99.9% match. A name he never expected to see. A bloodline he wasn't supposed to belong to. He wasn't just a self-made billionaire. He was the lost heir to one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in the world. A family that had deliberately erased him. The revelation sent a cold shiver down his spine. He had no memory of them, no connection to the life he was meant to have. But if they had gone so far as to erase him, it meant only one thing. He wasn't just forgotten. He was removed. And now he wanted to know why. A secret worth billions. With his newfound knowledge, Alexander had begun digging. The deeper he went, the more disturbing the truth became. His birth family wasn't just rich, they controlled industries, politics, and people. And someone had ensured he was never part of it. He learned that his birth father, Richard Blackwell, had been one of the most ruthless businessmen in history. But just weeks after Alexander was born, Richard had suffered a heart attack and died. His mother, Evelyn Blackwell, remarried too quickly. And then Alexander had vanished. Had he been abandoned? Kidnapped? Was there a deeper conspiracy behind his disappearance? The pieces didn't fit, but one thing was certain: someone in the Blackwell family had everything to lose if he returned. A dangerous game begins. Alexander didn't just want answers. He wanted justice. He started moving in silence, acquiring stakes in the companies tied to the Blackwell fortune. His wealth gave him power, but his anonymity was his weapon. He watched as the same board members, who once ruled without question, began to panic at the sudden shifts in the market. But someone had noticed him. Late one evening, a single message arrived at his private email. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." Alexander smirked. It was too late for warnings, because he had already uncovered something truly terrifying: evidence that his disappearance had been orchestrated by someone within the Blackwell family. And worse, someone had been watching him long before he took that DNA test. The climax, a shocking confrontation. The moment came unexpectedly. A lavish gala, filled with the world's elite. He wasn't invited, but that didn't matter. Alexander walked into the grand ballroom, his presence commanding. The murmurs began immediately. He saw them, the Blackwells, staring in shock. Evelyn Blackwell, his birth mother, went pale. Her husband, Charles Whitmore, the man who had taken over the Blackwell empire after Richard's death, gripped his champagne flute with white knuckles. Alexander raised a glass. A toast to family reunions. Gasps filled the room. The game was no longer in the shadows. But just as he thought he was in control, Charles smirked. "You should stayed lost, boy." And that's when Alexander realized he had underestimated his enemies. Final twist, a truth worse than betrayal. As the gala descended into whispers and tension, a woman approached Alexander. She looked familiar. Too familiar. "My name is Isabella Blackwell," she said, her voice steady. "And I think you and I have a lot more in common than you realize." She handed him a document. A second DNA test. The results made his stomach drop. Alexander wasn't just a missing heir. He wasn't just one forgotten child. He had a twin. And she had been watching him all along.